Hello, everyone. I want to thank you for tuning in. Welcome to the April 2020 edition of InfluxData Community Office Hours. We're delighted to have you all joining us. As a reminder, if there's anything you would like to ask as we go along, please feel free to use the Q&A option, which you'll see on your screen in the Zoom menu. This is a community call, so we absolutely want to be able to encourage all of your questions, comments, and conversation. If you have anything that you'd like to know or ask about the products, please feel free to use those features and ask away. I am Michael Ellis, Community Manager here at InfluxData. Additionally, on the call with us today is our awesome group of panelists and presenters. Today, we're joined by Tim Hall, VP of Product here at InfluxData, Russ Savage from the Product Management. Also with us today is fellow Community Manager Michael Hall. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having us on.
And if we have anyone tuning in that was not able to join us live today, this call will, of course, be recorded and available on our YouTube channel for viewing later. Our first presenter today is Tim Hall, who will be sharing an InfluxDB Open Source update with us. Tim, would you like to introduce yourself to the group and take it away?
Yeah, thanks, Michael. So I'm Tim Hall. I lead the product group here at InfluxData. And today, we're proud to announce our latest open source release of the database, version 1.8. You probably haven't seen it yet. The blog post just went up, but the bits are available on our download page. The documentation's been updated, and so it's ready for you to grab and use. Now, I wanted to go through some of the highlights of the release, important features and capabilities, and the big highlight is we're announcing that Flux, as the secondary query engine, is now available for production use. And so why is this important? We've been working for really over the last almost year and a half now on Flux as a language. And for many of you that have been with us a long time through, starting with, the 0.8 releases and beyond, and have been using InfluxQL for a long time, you probably noticed that there are some limitations with the query language. And while a lot of people enjoy the SQL-like syntax that we offer, those of you who are deep into SQL also have expressed some frustration around the limitations that InfluxQL imposes on you. And so we have been working very hard, reading all of the community feedback, watching the issues land in terms of features and capabilities that you wanted in a query language to work with data and time series data in general. And so Flux is really our attempt to address all of those things and provide the foundation for the future of working with data. And so we feel like the features and capabilities that many of you have wanted to unlock the power of the data that you have landed into InfluxDB thus far, they're in this release and available for you. Now, one caveat, we don't have the same query management controls that you currently have for InfluxQL. So if you're in the config file and you're looking at things like the number of series that you can access or query timeouts and those sorts of things, we'll look to wire those in to a maintenance release coming up. We have some of those similar controls now available in the beta 8 of Open Source 2.0, and we'll figure out how to wire those into the configuration file so you have some finer grained control and protection, so you don't get runaway queries and those sorts of things. But for now, I wanted to walk through kind of a drill down. Like here's all the things people have been waiting for, right? So Flux will allow you to join data residing in multiple measurements and across databases and even data sources. So it's not just a language for working with Influx itself. You can actually write SQL statements in there that will go out and connect to, say, a Postgres database or a MySQL database, CockroachDB, and pull data back from those sources and join it with your time series data. And why do we do that? Like, this is one of the central points and foundations of Flux, is that we understand that as people adopt different data platforms and technologies, they're having to write application code on top to stitch together data from a wide variety of sources. And one of the things we looked at is how can we simplify that for everyone by providing a single language for working with data where it resides. And so whether that data is in Influx or in one of your other favorite sources, you'll see the syntax for what we call from and to, which will allow you to read data from and write data to other sources. And right now, the focus has largely been on relational sources, some of the ones that I mentioned. We have experimental support for MQTT. We have experimental support for Bigtable. And you'll see many others start to arrive. There's a PR up actually right now for support for Snowflake. And that's one of the places where we'd love to get additional community feedback is what are the other kinds of data sources you'd love to be able to have Flux tap into, again, to simplify and reduce the amount of code that you have to write on top of the platform. Second, once you can join data, not only within Influx, but across these other sources, now you can perform mathematical operations for the data across measurements and databases. And so the community feature is called Math Across Measurements, and you can totally do that with Flux today. Another thing that's popped up from time to time is when you're working with string data, there wasn't the ability to parse, shape, trim, left, right, however you wanted to slice and dice the strings that were coming back from the database. There are now built-in functions to allow you to do that with data and result set. And related to that, you could also shape the data in a number of different ways using things like pivot and other functions that are available within Flux. So again, in terms of trying to reduce the amount of code that you have to write within the query language itself, you have a wide variety of mechanisms to shape and reshape the data. And again, a lot of times when you're running Influx, you might be gathering data from a wide variety of sources, and you may not have the ability to shape that data yourself on the way in. You're gathering it from a third party, or you're getting it from someone else. And so this will allow you to not only land the data successfully in the database now, but when you pull it out, you'll be able to shape it in a way that will make sense for potential upstream systems, visualization, and other tasks. Additionally, one of the limitations on InfluxQL today is that you can only group based on tags. And now with Flux, you can actually group based on any data column. So let's say you make a mistake in terms of fields or tags when the data lands, or again, as I mentioned, you don't have the ability to change that for whatever reason. You can now do grouping based on really any of the data elements. And then one of the other biggest outstanding requests, longest outstanding requests, is the ability to window data and aggregate it based on calendar month and years. And so that capability is now available in Flux, and you can take advantage of that immediately. That issue I've been on for a number of years and trying to figure out how we could satisfy that. And this is the first time that we've been able to do that for our community. Another sort of annoyance thing is being able to cast Booleans to integers. So if you get a true or false and you want it to go to 0 or 1, that is built into Flux, and you can take advantage of that as well. And then another big thing, we just have started working on functions for geotemporal queries. And so for those of you that are working with latitude, longitude data, there are functions now available within Influx to allow you to do geofencing based on defined shapes. Those shapes can be circle or polygon or a box. And then you can start to work on queries related to things that are moving inside or outside those shapes over time. And really, I highlighted 4 of these things here. We've gone through the list, but there are so many more functions for working with data that are available in Flux. And so we really want to encourage you to try it out. We're not saying you should go back and rewrite any of your existing dashboards or queries, but as you run into limitations with InfluxQL, you have a secondary option now in the 1.x line that will allow you to take advantage of and explore your data. And this is the sort of stepping stone to the future, right? And so related to that stepping stone, we go forward. there's sort of three other things I want to highlight in the release. And the first is compatibility. So in addition to having Flux as a secondary query engine that you can now use to explore your data, we also have now included API support for the read and write APIs and making them compatible with the 2.0 version of the database. Now, why did we do this? We have taken over ownership and support of the client libraries for 2.0. And I want to give a shout out to all the community members who have contributed in the past to the client library work. We feel the love and great interest in building those. The challenge has been there was not a certification suite sort of offered by us to validate both the consistency, performance, and capabilities of those libraries. And so what that ended up was that people who dove in to pick those libraries up and use them ended up in a wide variety of different states, and some happy and some unhappy. And so what we've done to try to move this forward is really look at the pattern that we wanted to implement for all of those client libraries and make them consistent. And so there is a new set of client libraries that are highly performant, have consistent set of features and functions, and that are being maintained by us for all of you to use. And in order to do that, and if you're starting, if you're still on the 1.x line and you want to take advantage of those libraries, you can do that now with the 1.8 release. Meaning those new libraries use those compatibility APIs for reading and writing, and there's a health check as well. And this is really setting the foundation for future proofing, meaning if you start using the open source instance and you're building something and you're going to scale it over time, but you're not ready to do that yet, you have the option to be able to do that. And we're here to help you run it operationally, meaning all you'll need to do is change the endpoints of your application and point it to InfluxDB Cloud. So again, that's our commercial offering, but we will run it as a multi-tenanted platform as a service for you to consume. So you can do all your testing, build out, scale up to whatever point you want. And then if you're like, okay, now I've reached a scale where I'd really like Influx to manage that for me, it's not an application rewrite, or it's not a huge set of changes. You use those new client libraries and point them at Cloud 2, and we'll be happy to help you with that. Now, other improvements in the release, so operational improvements, for those of you that are not using the in-mem index anymore, but have switched to TSI1, the spill to disk index, there is an offline compaction tool that's now available. That's a one-step compaction. So currently, the spill to disk index files continue to grow over time. They do not automatically compact. And so as a sort of administrative maintenance activity from time to time, you can shut the database down briefly, run through the compaction tool, and then fire everything back up. Now, additionally, we heard a bunch of feedback from community users about deploying InfluxDB behind a reverse proxy or in Docker containers with certain restrictions, and then the inability for the Influx CLI tooling to connect to the instance. And so now we've provided a mechanism within this Influx CLI to provide a custom path so that it can connect to the database that running behind that reverse proxy. So hopefully that will delight many of you who've been looking for that. And then we also extended the capabilities of the Influx Inspect tool to allow you to verify the tombstone files within the storage layer. And then last but not least, security is never done. We continue to advance security features and functions. We enhanced the ability for the query parameters that are being sent from clients to the server to use something called bound parameters to prevent SQL injection attack. We had a lot of this covered previously, but there were some edge cases that we wanted to clean up. And then TLS. TLS continues to advance, and ciphers continue to advance. And so we've added support for TLS 1.3. And again, this was a feature added a while ago, meaning that you can choose the min and max version supported TLS configurations in database. And so now this latest version can be specified as one that you can use. And that's a summary of 1.8. We hope you love it. Hope you're delighted by it. We're looking forward to hearing feedback about it. And let us know. Join the community Slack channel or dive into GitHub and let us know how it goes.
Great. Awesome. Thank you, Tim. If you have any questions for Tim, go ahead and post those via the Q&A feature on the Zoom window now. Tim, one question that came in, where can I find some more information about beginning to work with geotemporal queries?
Yep, in the documentation. For those of you that are familiar with 1.x documentation, you might have it bookmarked, but if you go to docs.influxdata.com, you'll land on what we call the cards page. There's a series of cards that you'll see there. Everything starting from working with the platform, which talks about how to manage and monitor Influx itself. But there's a card on that page specifically for Flux. So we didn't weave the Flux documentation sort of deeply within the 1.x InfluxDB instance. There's pointers that point you out to it. And the reason why is because Flux is such a richer language than InfluxQL. And so we're keeping that card up to date with the specific version in the 1.x line that is supported. And so you'll see the current supported version is 0.65. And in there is a whole section on geotemporal queries.
Awesome. Thank you, Tim. One more question that came in. Since the front end of Flux is written in Rust, it seems like it would be great to have a Rust client. Is there any plan to have one in 2.0?
Yes. So we'll continue to advance the support for client libraries. I've gotten 2 requests for libraries we don't have now. Rust is one, and Scala is the other one. So that's another great thing we'd love to hear from the community members is, what kind of clients or what kind of languages you're working with, and how we can help build those libraries quickly now that we've got a pattern in place and sort of the machinery to make that happen. So yeah, let us know.
Great. Thank you for that question, Michael. All right, if anyone else has any more questions for Tim, feel free to go ahead and use the Q&A feature, and we'll circle back to him after our next presentation.
Actually, we've got a question that came in on Slack earlier that I'd like to ask in here.
Oh, great, perfect.
So Mark in our community Slack says, I just saw InfluxDB 1.8 is released. Any idea if or when it will be made available on the CentOS 7 repositories that we host?
That I do not know. Normally when we publish the releases, there's sort of a back-end process to get those out to all the individual repos. And so that just may be a timing issue.
Okay.
Yeah, it should be within a few days.
Yeah, normally there's the ones we control directly, and then there's updates and PRs that need to be accepted by various other folks to make it through those processes.
Mm-hmm.
But it's normally of a delay of a couple of days until that happens.
Great, thank you. Any other questions coming in on Slack? Wonderful. We'll go ahead.
That's the only one I've seen so far.
Great. Up next on the call, we have fellow community manager Michael Hall, who will be speaking about InfluxDB templates. Michael, if you'd like to introduce yourself to the group and take it away whenever you're ready.
Sure. So, like I said, I'm one of the other community managers here at InfluxData, and I've been working on making templates available to our community and helping our community members write these templates. So let me see if I can paste the link to this. We've set up a GitHub repository where we are taking submissions of really any kind of template that somebody's working on, anything that might be useful to others. Let me grab this URL right here so I can share it in the chat.
So maybe Michael, while you pull that up, the idea behind templates is we want people to be able to share their expertise. And the critical part of templates is if you're building something on our platform today, how can you quickly and rapidly share that with other folks? And by building on top, it means everything from data collection, which could be through Telegraph or some other means. It could be dashboards that you're building. It could be monitoring alerts and notifications. Any asset that's built on top of Influx or is related to either populating data into Influx or consuming data out through our APIs could be packaged up in this mechanism around templates. And our desire is to have the community continue to help us build up and commoditize these things that are essentially, consistent and not necessarily, value added from your perspective. Meaning, system monitoring, network monitoring. These sorts of things should be commodity items. We don't need to reinvent the wheel every time. We have a platform for doing these things, but we need people's expertise. We need what's important to you. So if you're monitoring a web stack that includes, let's say, Apache Web Server, JBoss, and MySQL, and you're looking at sort of the key metrics that allow you to drive the health and availability of that web application, like packaging that up in a way that you can share it with others is really the goal of templates.
Yep. And the community template site is somewhere where you can publish whatever it is that you're working on to share it with others, let other people find it and get started using it. And more importantly, it lets people remix the work that you've done to either add things to it or take it in a completely different direction. So to go to Tim's example, if you want to monitor Apache, JBoss, and MySQL, there's not currently a template for that, but there's one that's got MySQL and Nginx, and there's another one that's got Apache and Postgres. So you can take bits from those two templates, add in a JBoss component, and now you've got a brand new template, but you've only had to do just a small part of the overall work. So we're really encouraging people to treat these as like open source applications that you can build on. You can contribute back to the original author, or you can use it as a base for your own template by adding new telegraph inputs or different graphs on your dashboard or some alerts, and take it in your own direction and make your own template out of it. It's really simple to get started. The tools for generating templates couldn't really be easier. There's a CLI for Influx, and you just tell it package export, and it'll create the file that you need automatically. After that, all you have to do to submit it is you have to put together a README file that explains what it does and how to set it up, and submit that as a GitHub pull request to this repository, and it will get reviewed and it'll get published there on the site. So if you go there now, I think we have like 11 or 12 templates up already, kind of a mix of system monitoring, network or deployment monitorings, and even an IoT template now. So we've got a base for you to get started from. We've got instructions to join in and submit your own template in there, and also to use one of the templates that's already up there. So I don't really have a lot of updates. We've talked quite a bit about templates in past community hours. So if you're curious about how they work, you can go back and watch one of those videos. I think last month, Russ did a real in-depth walkthrough of the process of applying a template to an InfluxDB instance.
Yep, and I can jump in. So just to give you a little bit of an update on some of the capabilities that are continuing to roll out in templates. So all the work behind the scenes for building and generating these via the CLI, that work is progressing as well. And pretty soon, right now, all of the templates that we have are very stateless, which means that when you create a template and you create the objects from that template, those are then that state behind the scenes of how those objects are related and connected isn't maintained. So we're building capabilities to maintain that state, which allows you to have the ability to improve and apply additional enhancements to the template as you go forward and kind of build that iteratively. And then we're also working on ways to consume templates via our UI. And so we're kicking off a design process and a design cycle. So look for more updates on how to consume those templates and install those really easily into your instances as we get that work completed. So a lot of active development internally on the templates process, and so really encourage you, if you're having any difficulty or any problems using or creating templates or have any questions, please reach out. We want to improve it. We want to make the process better. And thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Michael, and thank you, Russ.
That's new reality from working from home, Russ. It's great.
I've got a toddler downstairs as well, so I feel the struggle. If you would like to get more involved in the conversation and in our community, we have some great ways for you to be able to do that. And I'd like to share a couple of those with you now, if I may. First is our community forum. I encourage everyone on the call to hop over to the InfluxDB community portal, which can be found at community.influxdata.com. It's a great place to poke around, ask questions, find help, learn solutions to your issues, share your ideas, and just follow along with discussions. So be sure to check that out. We also have a Slack workspace that is open to our community. It can be accessed via influxdata.com/Slack. This is another great place to meet other community members, share your knowledge, and get help from community members and staff. Even if you don't have a specific support issue or a technical question, we want to encourage you to stop by, join the community channel, introduce yourself, and socialize with the other members of the community. And also for the Redditors out there, we have an InfluxDB subreddit available for you in case you want to pop over and check that out. It's not our most active channel, but it is off to a good start, and we do look forward to seeing it grow more over time. And up next, we want to share some quick community announcements and resources. The first is about the time series meetup. For anyone that's not familiar, time series meetups are events for everyone interested in time series data, including anyone who's passionate about time series data or how it might be utilized, as well as those people that are just curious about the topic and interested in perhaps learning more. The time series meetups take place around the globe, from everywhere from the Bay Area to Bangalore. We currently have a little over 20 communities that are actively engaging and hosting these. So if you're interested in participating, hop over to meetup.com after this call and check for a time series meetup in your area. It's a great place to learn about upcoming events and activities. And of course, currently not many people are meeting in person. So in lieu of in-person meetups, we're hosting virtual time series meetups via Zoom webinar. These have been actually a huge hit, and it enables people from communities that don't currently have time series meetups to join and participate. So we're actually really big fans of how that's turning out. Our next virtual meetup is scheduled to take place on April 30th. We hope that if you're interested, you're able to join us on an upcoming virtual meetup. We have lots of cool speakers join and present knowledge and projects that they've been working on. So definitely worth checking out if you're interested. If you'd like to join us, you can hop over to the URL listed on the screen and register for an upcoming meetup. That's influxdata.com/time-series-meetup/virtual-2020. Or you can go to InfluxData community page and find the link to that from there. And community office hours, which is the call that we're on right now. So we hold our community office hours once a month, and we'd love for you to stop in again. We have different folks from InfluxData joining us and sharing on different topics. So be sure to check back and see what we'll be presenting next. Office hours are typically scheduled for the third Wednesday of every month at 10 a.m. Pacific time. Our next call is scheduled for May 20th. So if you're interested in learning more or would like to ask more questions, please feel free to come back next month. We're always excited to see community members returning to the call. And we have our community showcase, which is a central resource for all things community. Here we list upcoming events, where Influxers are going to be, like upcoming talks by our DevRels. We'll also list upcoming webinars and interesting articles that have been shared by the community, as well as links to other initiatives that we have for our community. So it's a great resource if you're looking for ways to connect with the community where you live or online as well. Yeah, Michael asked if we can please post the virtual meetup link here. We certainly can. Caitlin, would you be able to provide that in the chat for everyone? And the upcoming Influx Days conference. This has changed a little bit. Originally, we were of course going to hold this conference in person in London, but we're mixing things up. So the upcoming Influx Days conference will be held as a virtual event on June 23rd and 24th. This edition of Influx Days will be held at absolutely zero cost to all attendees. So we hope you're able to join us for lots of great talks and presentations about all things time series. And if you're interested in presenting at an upcoming Influx Days, the San Francisco instance of Influx Days is still currently planned to take place in person October 20th and 22nd. Hopefully by then, the world will have returned to some semblance of normalcy. And we are still looking for great speakers for Influx Days San Francisco. So if you're interested in presenting, please hop over to influxdays.com to learn more about the event and submit your CFP. And do a quick last check for questions. Michael, let's make sure that we get that link to you. Oh, thank you so much, Caitlin. Appreciate you sharing that. Well, thank you all for joining us today at the April edition of the Community Office Hours. We hope you can join us again on May 20th for our next call. We look forward to seeing you there. Thanks, everyone.